Welcome everyone, and thank you for coming to our research series. Today's session, Questionnaire Design and Survey Research, will be presented by Frances Farrell, Senior Director of Research and Development in Carilion Clinic, and Dr. Min Wang, Manager of Research Analytics. Dr. Farrell will be providing insight into questionnaire design, and then Dr. Wang is going to be discussing the uses and utility of REDCap for survey design and data collection. Our next session will be in July, and that will be Introduction to Quantitative Methods and Analysis with Dr. Brock Mutchison, Director of Assessment and Program Evaluation at VTC SOM. So join me in welcoming Dr. Farrell and Dr. Wang.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's really nice to see this many people here for this session. I want to take about 30 minutes because I think probably most of you are here to hear about REDCap. And so REDCap is our new research data capture system. It got launched in March 1st of this year, and there's already 19 projects active. So I think if you have a project that you think you could use REDCap, you can talk to Min. She's here, and so we'll leave some time for that. So my section is going to be talking about questionnaire design, or what I call survey research. So survey research is really good to gather almost any type of information, demographics, opinions, preferences, knowledge, outcomes. But it's important to know that not all surveys are research. I know some of you participated in doodle polls. It's a survey to see when you're available for a meeting. So obviously that's not research. So we're mostly going to talk about research surveys today. So the advantages of doing questionnaire research or survey research is generally the cost is generally low for the most part. The sample size is nice. It varies from quite small when you do basically personal interviews to extremely large, internet surveys, etc. You can gather information on multiple issues and topics. And the formats that most of you guys will probably be using now is the internet, but in the past, I can see somebody of my generation, it's mail surveys that you usually used to get, throw in the trash, interviews, phone interviews, or just personal interviews itself. So surveys, though, although people think of it as sort of like a baby step into research, they're actually quite powerful, and I think most of you guys are familiar with J.D. Power and Associates. And obviously that's a survey, if you've ever got one of those, it's about a 15-page survey. Usually get it after you buy a new car. And if you're number one in the J.D. Power and Associates survey for your car of the year, it's a big marketing tool. It's something that companies really strive for. And I see now J.D. Power is being used for rating hotels, etc. So some of the disadvantages, though, of a questionnaire research is that you really need the respondents to self-report. You send this out, you don't really have a clear idea who's going to respond, who's not going to respond. The second thing is the respondent itself. You're not there with them in the case of a questionnaire, in most cases questionnaire research. You're not going to know how they interpret the questions. So we're going to actually do a little bit of exercise and look at some of the questions, some of the do's and don'ts that you shouldn't do. The other thing, there's actually respondent bias. If you send it out, one of the things I thought, we recently had our Carilion Clinic Research Day, and in the past we used to send out a survey, how much you liked the day, etc., etc. I always find that people that kind of like the day are going to say they loved it, and the people that don't really like doing surveys that maybe did like the day, you're not going to hear from them. So there's always a bias, and we can discuss that a little bit later. And last thing, the biggest problem that you have with survey research is you actually have to extrapolate to non-responders because there's going to be a significant amount of people that aren't going to respond to your survey. And the last one is what we're going to talk about is the item bias. So if you don't actually ask the right questions, you're going to waste a lot of time and energy on your survey and get nothing out of it. So we'll show you some do's and don'ts. So here's really just comparing and contrasting some various formats: mail, telephone, interview, and internet. So when you go out and you're thinking about doing some type of survey, be it mail, telephone, or interview, some of the things you should look into is cost, response, how much time that you will have to spend putting your survey together, the study time, the sample time, anonymity is a big one right here. So one of the things is if it's a mail survey, you can actually make it quite anonymous, right? You send it out, it comes back, you don't know who's, but if you do a telephone survey, you have to have a phone number. Interview, obviously, it's personal contact. And in the internet, although you can send it out and make it kind of anonymous, you still have these web addresses. So the respondent bias, so there's both the respondent bias and investigator bias with telephone interviews. So if you call and the person has a real calming voice or asks leading questions, it's going to influence how you answer it. They might sort of lead you one direction. I think some of the worst surveys are when you have your car fixed and they call you to get service. They want you to rate it from 1 to 5, and 1 is best and 5 is the worst. If you say 2, they try to get you to say 1, because they're really just collecting. Same thing, I know cruise lines do the same things with surveys. They want you to always say it's the best. So that's one of the things I think with telephone or interview, is that there's a lot of that personal interaction that might influence you with doing surveys. The other thing too with an interview is there's really going to be body language that's real important. But like for an internet, there's really no investigator bias, whereas for an internet survey, the respondent bias, you're really looking at people that really are computer literate. So you're going to cut out a big section of your population. If you send out a survey to people that aren't very computer savvy, you're going to lose that audience. The other thing too, a mail survey tends to take a long time. You have to send them out. You have to say when you want it back. So that's a long time, whereas an internet survey can actually be quite short. Same thing with an interview or telephone. Some of the other things too, response rate with mail, as I said before, is actually can be quite low. Internet surveys, it's variable, access to computer. Interview is high, although it takes a lot of energy to get your interviews set up, it's high. Once you have them, you can get the survey information. So one of some of the important aspects of email surveys, which you've already gone over, is an email survey is very low cost. The data entry might be costly, but I'll show you some sites that you guys might want to use that are free open source software. Same thing with the personnel that you use. Generally you, the investigator that put it in the survey, is the only one that really needs to know how to run it. Limited training for others that might be actually collating the data. You can have a very large sample size for the email survey. You just need to have names and email addresses. Problem though with email surveys is the response rate is generally low. It's generally, if you can get greater than 30% response, you're actually doing quite well. We sent out a research and development survey last fall. I don't know if everybody got it. And we got about 146 respondents, and we were actually pretty pleased with that. And we've got a lot of positive and negative criticisms, and some of those negative criticisms we've actually tried to do and try to fix. And we'll be sending out another survey in the fall of this year. The other thing with the email survey, the bias, the non-respondent bias is very high. So there's a significant, that 70% of the population you send it to, you don't know what they think. And you have to extrapolate from who responded to that folks. But the nice thing about any email survey, it's very non-intrusive to the subject. You can do it at home, you can do it at work, do it in the afternoon, etc. So that when you send out a survey, it's real important that you have an introductory statement or a cover letter that goes with the survey. Generally, you want to limit that to 1 page. And so some of the things that you need to put in there is who you are and what's the background for this study, the purpose of the study, what will be done with the data, maybe some statement or two about why you were chosen, what's the assurance of confidentiality, how they need to actually fill out the survey. That's real important. If it's very complicated, they're going to give up on it. Contact information if questions arise. And then approval for survey, if applicable, and this has to do with the Institutional Review Board. I'd like to introduce Carly Emerson, who's sitting here in the front row. I'm going to show a few IRB slides. If I get it wrong, she's going to correct me. But we need to talk, that's one aspect about a survey that we need to address in this presentation. Return deadlines. I know people send these out, they spend a lot of money, time, and effort. They forget to put the return deadline, and if it's hard to find. The other thing too, if you make it too long, people tend to say, okay, I'll get it some other time, and then they miss the deadline. Statement of importance is real important. Acknowledgements, if any, and then appreciate that they're taking their time to do this. maybe closing and signature. So if you can get all those things in less than a page or in your introductory preface to the survey, that's real important. Okay. So now let's talk a little bit about the IRB. So if you need approval for your survey, it's applicable. It has to be reviewed by the Institutional Review Board. So these definitions I took out of a textbook, so I think I got this part right. So IRB approval is needed whenever a project meets regulatory definitions of a human subject research, and either by the common rule or FDA regulations. So the common rule basically says that, is it human subject research or human subjects involved? This point right here I'd like to really stress. So, you should really, if you're here at Crewland Clinic and you're doing a research survey, it needs to go through the IRB. So the IRB actually approves your survey, not R&D, not your department chair, not your advisor, not your instructor. Okay, so that's a real important key point to know. Would you like to mention anything, Carly, or not?
Just the common rule is it's OHRP, DHHS regulations versus the FDA regulations, which typically don't apply if you're only doing a survey.
Okay, so right here, this is what she kind of was getting to, categories of exempt human subject research. So this is really taken out of the document research conducted in established or commonly accepted educational settings, including normal educational practices, research on regular or special education instructional strategies, or research on the effectiveness of a comparison among instructional techniques, etc. And the two right here is the one that really a lot of us will fall under, whereas research involving use of educational tests or survey procedures. And so they'll be exempt if the information obtained, unless the information obtained is recorded in such a manner that subjects can be identified directly or through identifiers linked to the subject, or this last one, through any disclosure of the human subject responses outside the research could reasonably place the subjects at risk for criminal or civil liability or damaging to the subject's financial standings, employment, or reputation. So don't you make the decision, the IRB will make this decision.
Can I just comment on that briefly? Yep.
Yeah.
So exemption is the IRB needs to make that determination, not the investigator. This may change. So in January of 2018, the first time in about 20 years, the federal regulations are changing. The definitions will probably be changing as well. We're still kind of waiting to hear, even though it's June, unbelievable. They're supposed to go into effect in January. We're still waiting to hear finalization on if that's definitely moving forward or not due to the administration change. Number two, most, like Francis said, most surveys will fall under here. The big thing is if you don't need identifiers, don't collect them. It will allow your research to otherwise be exempt, where if you collect identifiers and you're collecting any sensitive information, it would not be exempt. And identifiers, when you're talking about sending out emails, if you use some of the tools that Francis will probably mention, like SurveyMonkey, SurveyGold, there's a place where you have to check or uncheck whether you want to collect IP address. If you collect IP address, we consider that to be an identifier. So you need to make sure you're looking at that and letting the IRB know that you've definitely selected to not maintain the IP address or collect that information.
So a little bit about the protected health information. There's 18 qualifiers right here: name, dates, times, addresses, date of birth. You can ask age unless you're over the age of 89, but don't ask the date of birth. So these are some common mistakes people will make, and we try to catch them in R&D. But if we don't catch them, then it'll be caught by the IRB. And IRB. And if you don't need it, don't collect it. Okay. Obviously, email, social security number, your medical number, record number, licenses, or anything that can identify you. There's the URLs right there, IP addresses, photographs, unique numbers or codes, and then the people that are of rare conditions, the vulnerable groups, things like that. So this was an example of, and of course I took out the title and who this went to, but this is a case I want to really stress. An investigator here at Carillion sent a survey to us. We reviewed it in a few days, and the IRB was, I can't guarantee this, and I don't want to speak for their, this whole thing got turned around in less than a week. So maybe he got lucky or not, but it was a process. He kind of was hesitant. He was kind of saying, it's going to get caught up with you guys. It's going to get caught up with the IRB. The whole thing from submission to both places here took less than a week. So as you can see right here, I won't read it, but you can tell where the IRB clearly states that they've reviewed your study. In this case, it was a survey, and why it's the status that they gave it, that they don't really, doesn't need continuing IRB review, the criteria of exemption, and it gives the code of federal regulation, and then it states it right down here. And it also says the HIPAA does not need to be waived for the study as no PHI was collected or used or disclosed, but then if you make any changes, you need to contact the IRB. So Carly, you want to say anything about that?
We're changing a lot of we're trying to make our letters a little bit shorter because sometimes there's too much information in there. I think some of the important information gets missed. So we're not always going to be spelling out all the categories. We might just say exempt category 2, and then you can look at the regulations, but most survey research will fall under there. And we're trying to put the important information up at the top of the letter, such as your approval date, things like that, not buried in as much.
Yeah, I took all that away just to maintain confidentiality. This was really just the body of the text. Okay, so let's talk about internet surveys here. So when you do an internet survey, data is immediately available when the respondent submits the survey. The results will be either loaded into a database or go directly to a database. Presently, we have Qualtrics here. Jenny Lane is the contact person for that if you want to do a Qualtrics survey. Carly mentioned SurveyMonkey, SurveyGizmo, Google, or other online, in most cases, open software that can be used. We're going to finish up today talking about RedCap, which we're real excited about, and we're actually now using it Brilliant to run your surveys. So personal interview surveys, again, I mentioned this before, they're high cost. You've got to train your personnel, relatively small sample size, high response rate due to face-to-face encounters. Your data is varied. It tends to be a lot of unstructured questions, a lot of transposition, so it might limit the amount of data that's collected. So one of the things when you set out doing your survey, you need to ask questions that either address your research question, your hypothesis, or maybe using it really for the null hypothesis. So one thing that's always almost on every survey is demographic data. You pretty much always count it. When getting ready for this presentation, sometimes they were saying that maybe you should put this at the end, because I know when people see a survey, the first thing you ask a lot of questions about demographics. The first thing you're annoyed, or you get this feeling that they're really honing in on who I am. This age, I work on this floor. So that's something to think about whether you put it at the beginning or the end. Again, structured, unstructured questions. Tend to not use many unstructured questions, because that now has to all be collated. And sometimes it's useful, sometimes it's not. So now get into some things. Avoid questions that have two concepts, and they're called double-barreled questions. So I'll give you an example. What do you think the speed limit should be for cars and trucks? So everybody can see, this is already assuming that you think it should be the same, right? Maybe you don't think it should be the same. So this is what's called a double-barreled question. So avoid double negative questions. And so I actually saw this on the internet last night, and I never thought of this. For some of you, the rolling stone, I can't get no satisfaction. So that actually means he does get satisfaction, right? So if you ask a double negative question like that, people are confused. Is it yes or no? So one of the things here, do you disapprove of the Affordable Care Act? So you can see when people look at that, and they can answer yes or no and get it wrong. Avoid leading questions. How short was Napoleon? Well, maybe you didn't know that Napoleon was short, right? But now you know, and you have to say, well, I don't know, or he's really short. Avoid absolute questions if you can. Do you eat breakfast every morning, every day? Well, most people don't every day, but they're asking yes or no. If you're in the middle, you can say, well, I do most of the time. Avoid biased questions. Where do you drink wine in Roanoke? So it means, A, they already assume you drink wine. You only drink wine in Roanoke. And so, and you don't drink it when you're not in Roanoke, right? So the other thing is avoid overlapping ranges. This is a very common mistake. What's your annual salary? So you can see here, $50,000 or less, okay? So you could check that box. But then B is $50,000 to $60,000. So if you actually make $50,000, you could skew the results by either checking the first category or the second category. The other one too is avoid inadequate response options. For example, how long have you been at your job? So less than a year, 2 to 5 years. And then there's this big thing here, greater than 5. So the greater than 5 is 6 years, 20 years, 30 years. So you're really missing a lot of data here by making inadequate response options. Don't assume prior knowledge or understanding. So one I thought of is, what type of smartphone do you own? Is this assuming that everybody in the room knows what a smartphone is? My mother-in-law doesn't know what a smartphone is. She wouldn't know how to answer that. Same thing, have you ever had a CT scan? I don't know, what is a CT scan? Is that the same thing as an MRI? Who knows, right? So this one here, avoid ambiguous questions. Are you willing to relocate for your job? Now this is used a lot for when you apply for a job. Does this mean relocate from community hospital to Rent Memorial? Relocate to Tazewell? So it's a very open question. The last one, avoid making your questions too general. Do you think wireless devices can cause health problems? So I might say, yeah, wireless devices make you stay up late, you lose sleep, etc., right? Because you're always looking at your phone. Others will check yes, because they think it gives you brain tumors. But you can't capture those two concepts with that general of a question. So when you want to get your responses, it's best to use a ranking or rating. So generally, 1 is most preferred down to least preferred is 5. And try not to mix your rankings or ratings between questions. So if you set up your survey so that 1 is your most preferred, keep that consistently to your survey. Generally what you're going to see here is what's called a verbal frequency scale, a Likert scale where you have strongly agree, neutral, disagree, strongly agree. So that's very common. If you can actually use the Likert scale, please do. You can also use a variation of a verbal frequency score, always, often, occasionally, infrequently, or never. I think on my last slide is very important. Proofread your survey, because it's kind of embarrassing to spend all this time and energy. You send it out, and then you realize you forgot to do the due date, or you left out an important question, or there's grammatical errors. The other thing, too, is I haven't talked about, because this is another research session, is consult with the statistician very early in your survey development plan, right? Because in some cases, you might even need this for your IRB approval. So make sure that you consult with the statistician. Are you going to get what you think you're going to get? Review your layout placement. Make sure the submit button is very easily to see. Pilot test the survey among yourself, maybe a colleague or something like that. And then lastly, do not launch without IRB approval. So it's real easy to send it out on the internet, say, hey, it's coming, they'll approve it. Well, you never know until you actually get that letter, okay? So that's the last point I want to leave you with. So that's my last slide. So I think we have time for like a question or two. If anybody has any questions.
So when you send out the pilot study, the pilot launch of your survey, so you'd recommend doing that to some peers and do it in such a way that twofold, they're looking at the questions you have, but also giving you feedback on this question could be written better. You're looking at from a feedback point of view as well as information, or?
So I might let Carly answer that, but I'll answer for, I would do it with among people that are part of the study.
Are you talking about participants?
Yeah, for the pilot.
Research team members? Or, yeah, I would say.
So part of your committee?
Yeah, just to get feedback. And then obviously those would be answers that you would use towards your, and so you could do that before you got IRB approval if you're not going to use that data towards your survey analysis.
Thank you.
And obviously if there are survey tools that are out there that are already deemed to be reliable and validated, you want to utilize those. But you do want to just keep in mind that if you pull some type of approved, validated survey off the internet, you don't remove a question or add a question, because then you're completely invalidating a survey that's been validated.
Do you have a recommendation if you're looking to use a survey that has been used numerous times and it's an older tool, and it was most recently used in another country, but the original author of the tool is deceased, and you're having difficulty reaching things? What is the creativity and how to access them? The country, the most recent publisher now is in Canada and Quebec.
Yeah,
So
I
I'm having
think
a difficulty. Just any recommendations from anybody?
I would look to see if it's used in any other types of publications out there, and if you can reach out to somebody that's utilized it, that maybe they have some feedback they can provide you.
Okay, great, thank you.
Cassandra, do you have a question?
Oh, it's just about the validation issue. If there isn't a survey out there that's validated that's going to work for what you want to ask, are there some internal statistics or something that you can do that's reportable that gives some idea of validity of the study, or no?
Yeah, I think that's where you consult with a statistician on that.
Do you recommend that what some surveys have, where if you answer positive or negative, then a space opens up and you're supposed to put some sort of verbal? need some sort of written explanation.
Yeah, I don't know if that'll be good. I'll let other people answer this too. I think what will happen with that is if you're doing a research, you're going to get a lot of confounding answers to that, and what do you do with that? Because what happens is they might say yes, and then their explanation actually, it looks like it's no.
I would say you need to think about what your research question is and what the need for that is, and if you need qualitative data in addition to the quantitative data that you have. And if you go that route, then you're going to need to be prepared to code it and look for themes and things like that, which then kind of takes you to another level. So I think if you need a description for something or comments after, at the end maybe rather than after every question, if there's one specific theme you're targeting. I don't know if anybody else has more experience.
So I'd like to introduce Min Wong, and let's
First of all, thank you very much for the opportunity for me to present. And thank you, Francis, for volunteering me. It's my great honor and pleasure to present RedCap. So I'm the manager of Health Analytics Research Team. And Francis talked about the approvals. If you have a survey in mind, what kind of approval and how you can get approvals. This is the most important step, and also the number one step for you to begin with. Say for now you have a survey in your mind, and you got your appropriate approval. How you can make your survey ready to send out to your participants or to your targets. So this is where we come in to help you, to assist you to get the survey ready to be sent out. So I'm going to start with talking about the hard surveys, and I introduce RedCap, and then we move on to how we can use RedCap to do the surveys. The hard is what our team is called, Health Analytics Research Team. It's formed the end of last year, and our service include we can extract medical information from records. We have data analysts on the team, and we can also do statistical analysis. We have biostatistician on the team. And also, if the researchers want, we can advise on study designs. Especially at the very beginning, we'd like to have a biostatistician on the study discussion panel to make sure all the data collected are feasible, and also the patient volume are actually feasible. Patient samples are actually right size for your study. And after the study are all done, we can also get involved with drafting the paragraph for your manuscript or prepare your presentation or posters. And besides all that, we also support applications, and RedCap is one of them. So now let's zoom on to RedCap. RedCap is abbreviation for Research Electronic Data Capture. And basically it's a web-based, it's a very secure application for data storage and data sharing. It was first developed at Vanderbilt University. It's now used in over 2,000 institutions across over 100 countries. So not just within US, it's been used across all the continents like Africa, Asia, Europe, and Australia. So it's used worldwide. RedCap at creating, like Francis mentioned, it went live on March 1st. Now we have 19 projects ongoing for RedCap. It's open to all research and QA/QI projects. It's currently maintained by the HEART team. And best of all, it's free. Here just shows the infrastructure of our creating RedCap. So basically, it shows that all the data collected into RedCap, the data will be stored in the RedCap database server. And that server is located behind the creating internal firewall. So it is at the same security level as all our Epic data. It has the highest security. And then it provides the web server provides a web interface so that you can access RedCap from anywhere. So not just within Crealy network, you can access RedCap from outside Cree network. So this is important for like multi-center collaborations, that the collaborators outside Cree, they can access RedCap to our RedCap, and then we can gather data all together into our RedCap. And this is just a homepage of RedCap, how it looks like. There are several different tabs, and the most frequently used the two most frequently used tabs are these two the ones are on the projects. So the type of project that RedCap can support, one is survey, and we're going to talk more about it. And it can also support traditional project, meaning we create forms or design RedCap forms, and then we enter data. So we, meaning either our team or you, all within recruiting. So enter data by ourselves. Compared to survey, we design forms, we send it out, and collect data from respondents. And it also support longitudinal study, or the combination of any of the above. So we do have project has a combination of survey plus traditional project, and those data will all come together and combine into one project. Now move on to how to use RedCap to create survey. So it's just like any survey form you have in mind, and if you have experience with like any type of survey, maybe we are one of the targets that we receive a survey from some commercial companies. So we can design survey to suit the research purpose. It can be like click some buttons, the participants can just click. Like here, it can be a single response or multiple response. It's just one example of how survey may look like. Or it can be something you can put in description of your questions. And the type of field like we can design and people respond to, either yes, no, or multiple choice, or even date. And it even allow all the text box. And for the question you just asked about, like if people click once a yes or no, and then we open up another several questions. So technically it's doable. We call it branching logic. So it depends on the response of the first question, and then we decide if the next question will pop out or not. So RedCap has this function. And also it allows the upload of documentation. And normally it may not be for survey, but we do have a project that it's a multi-center collaboration, and investigators from other institutions need to upload the diagnosis video and pathological pictures and centralize those to creating sites. So I think we're going to use RedCap, and people from other sites, they can upload their video and we'll download to our sites. So instead of they transferring with a USB drive, that's not safe at all. So they do have this option of uploading documents. Now the distribution, to distribute a survey, people mostly use email invite. So we'll have a link embed in email, and of course we'll need email address from your target. So we have that link in the email, and the option is like we can decide, say this person can only respond once. So when this person clicks submit, the survey is done. He cannot go back to redo the survey. Or there's another option. We can also say the person can redo if the person doesn't like the response, he can redo the survey. So he can retake the survey. There's an option to do that. But most people will just choose if people click submit, and that's it. That's the final answer. And also there's an anonymous survey link. So it's like public link. Anybody knows of the link websites, they can just go get onto the website and enter their response. So that's why it's called anonymous. In this case, people can enter multiple response. They can click submit and come back there and click another submit. It counts as like two different responses. Because it's not tracking who's entering the survey response. And also, we can put a link on certain websites, like maybe on your department websites, we can put in the survey link, and that will be treated as the public survey link, because anybody click that link, they can start to enter their responses. And QR code, we haven't used that yet, so it's mainly just for some product available, and people just scan the label on the product, and they have the survey showed on the cell phone, and they can start to respond. Or the other scenario, if people who you want to target to, they have difficulty to access internet, you can print out the survey and hand to them, and then later on you gather the survey back, and then you enter into RedCap, so we have all the response in one place. And so RedCap also provides some analysis function. So one is just a descriptive, as the picture shows here. So it shows for each individual question, it shows the distribution of each answer, like how many answer good, how many answer excellent. So it's just more descriptive. And if you want to do more further analysis, the results can be exported to either Excel or R or SAS, so all the statistical software for further analysis, for like more complicated analysis. And so for this, I guess when we design the survey, we want to think about, especially for the text boxes, how we are going to analyze, because most of the time these software are not able to analyze the text box. Like all the comments, we can have those if you want. Like you can go through the comment to see what people's comments are, but the software will not be able to handle how to analyze the text box. So when we design, we want to, like, if we really want to put in some comments, see if we can break down into like category as good, or something we can measure in a way. So hopefully you have an idea of like how we can use RedCap to do a survey, and also the HEART team will help you with design the survey. And so how are we going to request the RedCap service? It's pretty simple. So either contact R&D and they'll refer to us, or just contact us directly, or you can submit an Edison ticket, and this is the Edison website. So you just enter in, you have a project or survey or project you want to use RedCap, and then we'll reach back to you to have some further discussions. So what we can do is we'll work with you on the question designs, and since we have been working on several surveys, and hopefully like along the year, along the time, we accumulate the experience of like how to design the survey, how to make the question look more attractive for people to answer, like, and also easier to analyze. And after that, we'll convert that questionnaire into RedCap forms. And like Francis mentioned, the pilot run, so we can do that too. And to send out to the research team, whoever want to have this test run, to see if the look of the survey will really fit what you want. And then we can help you send the survey out. So if you decide to use the email method to deliver the survey, we'll need to gather a list of the emails and then send the survey out automatically from RedCap. It's not from any personal, it's just the RedCap email address. Send out the survey. And that's the other thing about the identifiers. So Carly mentioned about the identifier of the survey. So there's an option in RedCap, we can disable that function. So even we have the email address, send out the survey, when the response comes back, that response will not link to the email address. So you have no idea to know whoever that person is. There's another function you can enable to say, I want to identify, but identify in a way the Red Cap will assign a number to each email address. And when the survey comes back, that survey result will only link to that number without reviewing the email address. So sometimes I guess when you see an email address, you know who that person is. But this way, the Red Cap automatically keep like a table and say these are the email address, these are the number associated with the email address. And when you see the response, you only see the numbers, you don't see the emails. And
Would that then allow you to collect like demographic characteristics of responders versus non-responders?
it depends on the survey if you want to build that question into the survey. And all Red Cap response can gather is just that email address. There's nothing associated with the demographics. But if you build in the question in that survey and people will respond, then you have the information. But that has to go through IRB approval.
Yeah, and
for
I think
that.
the nice thing about that, I'm guessing, is that then you can say, send a reminder to all non-responders, and so it doesn't send an email to everybody that you had on your initial list, because it already knows who's responded, so it only sends a reminder to those people who haven't done it yet.
Yeah, exactly. And also sometimes like the survey, you want to design as the pre and post some kind of educational program, and you want to link the pre and post survey result to that single person. So Red Cap will create that link, because that's the number is the link, but without using the email address. So still you have a way to link this pre and post survey without knowing who that person is. And then finally we can collect and analyze.
If you track an email address, does that make it not, up for exemption by the IRB? Or because Red Caps tracks it and keeps it from us, we don't know? Does that still allow for exemption?
I think we would depend, probably, we can talk about that a little bit more, but probably think about the questions that are being asked. Obviously, if they're non-sensitive questions, non-PHI, then it could still be exempt. I think that would be okay. You could say it was anonymous if it's not directly linked, if you're not able to get back to that code. And I'm not sure how Red Cap runs that.
Even though Red Cap does, obviously, because they said that the second line.
Yeah. I think if that link is broken for the investigator, then we can say it's anonymous.
Yeah. And the email will be sending out automatically, so it's not like we're mainly just drafting, depends on what letter you're going to send out in the email. So we'll put that letter in Red Cap, and the email will be sending out automatically to the whole email list. So we won't do it manually, one by one. I think that's about it. So just finally, remember Red Cap for survey.
May I ask a question? Obviously, this is a very exciting instrument, but obviously we don't want to use it for, I want to see who can attend my child's birthday party. So what sort of authorization would we need to approach the HEART team or Red Cap for appropriateness of using your services?
So we talked about that very point this morning at our 8 o'clock meeting, our steering committee meeting. So obviously, we're using this for research, and the good thing about Red Cap too is if you actually use Red Cap for your survey, this has already been vetted by privacy and security. And they actually like for you to be using Red Cap because of the safeguards in it. But there is instances where people here at Curly will want to use Red Cap for, can you make it to a birthday party? We're thinking about setting up a Red Cap instance just for those types of instances. What we don't want people to be using those to make it circumventing the normal process. But we have thought about that, Bill.
Yep.
Just a minor question. You get a gas bill and you get to the option of a paper response or an online response. Can we do that with Red Cap, where you can say fill in this form or go to this website and where they find this form?
You mean like we provide them with the website on a piece of paper or?
Right, so if I'm enrolling my patients in a study and I say to them, 3 days from now, I'd like you to complete this questionnaire, can at the bottom of the questionnaire, there be an option for an online way of completing the same questionnaire? Because some people just prefer to point and click, and other people prefer to fill out a piece of paper and put it in the envelope and mail it back.
Yeah, we can do that too. So yeah, it's all like we can design the form just as a survey, like people will click online, and you can just print out that survey, print on a piece of paper, and hand it to whoever you want to. And after you fill out the answer, and it's best to, after you get the answer from the targets, it's best to enter that data back into RedCap. So when you analyze the data together, you have that part of this
Right, but can I give the individual the option as to whether they want to fill out that piece of paper or go and fill out their own survey on RedCap electronically?
Yeah, I guess we can, like for, let's say, we have the whole email list, and we send out a survey. If people don't respond, we send a reminder. And maybe after the reminder, people still don't send response. In that case, if you want to print out survey, and I don't know if you can mail them or not, because this is another different category than the emails. So suppose you have an approval to gather their mailing address and send out the mail. I guess you can do that.
Is that what you're talking about? If you send a letter to somebody to complete a survey, and then you also want to give them the option to do it online?
Well, I mean, most of the people that I do my research with at the moment are direct patients of ours, so we usually enroll them in person, and we have some forms we want them to fill out and return to us, but some people just prefer to fill things out electronically, so I'm wondering, and that of course for those people would mean that there'd be less physical data entry, but can you have a mixed survey like that?
Yes.
You know, where, and I'm never gonna have that person's email because that's not something important for us to, you know, so can they just go to the website, identify themselves the way that they would on it? And
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, you can have like mixture of the distribution ways to to deliver the survey, and all those data will still come back to the same project. Yeah, you can do that.
Or even if you are seeing patients and you have the ability to get a laptop or an iPad or something in your clinic, you can even give them the option to do it right there in clinic on RedCap, directly entering the data rather than giving them a paper form. But if you're mailing something out, then you just would you'd have your paper survey, and then you'd say if you prefer to do this online, go to this link.
Yeah, or we have daily diaries.
Right.
You know, so you can have them in every day. Yeah. Thank you.
So if you do a version of the survey, do they go back to you and you all will enter all the data into an electronic format, or do we have to?
Right. If it's electronically, it will automatically go to RedCap database. It's collected there. But if it's a paper, like you print it out, give it to your patient, and they fill it out, you still need to, the researcher will take the survey and go to RedCap and enter those data. Like you are taking a survey, right?
Just like a regular CRF that you can participant fill out.
Yeah.
Sorry. Is there a cost for the hard surfaces? The RedCap is pretty good.
Yeah, visual cost.
So what we're trying to encourage people to use is HART, because the more people use it, then they can justify hiring people. So we want you to, we don't want gridlock, but we want people to start doing research and utilizing the services.
And I think something we've talked about a lot is using these things proactively. So to the IRB, reach out to us early on and start talking to us. Reach out to HART early on and start talking about us. Because if you go back to Min's previous slide, it talks about the IRB will need to see your research questions, right? We need to see the survey questions that you're going to give out to participants. But yet you need to work with HART to design those questions. So you kind of get caught in this loop there. So what we recommend is kind of have your base questions, consult with HART, have them kind of finalize your questions. The IRB won't need to see what it's going to look like exactly in RedCap. The questions might be moved around, or they might be, the formatting might be different, and that's all fine, but the IRB will want to see those finalized questions that you're going to be giving out. So you need to consult with HART, kind of get your questions finalized, come to the IRB. Once you get approval, then they'll build it back into RedCap. But for all this, I think, we're trying to hopefully be more research friendly on the front end and eliminate on both your end and our end the frustration of, the back and forths. And so I think the more you can work with us up front and we can work with you up front, hopefully that will make everybody's lives easier on the back end, because the IRB will get a more complete application. You'll have thought through your study a little more thoroughly.
Just a comment. I work in psychiatry, and much of our information is protected in, I don't know, 10 different ways. This service, because I don't have to worry about the integrity and exposure of the data. You guys have already done that. This is a godsend. This is a wonderful service.
Yeah, Mary Potter actually likes RedCap very much.
Very strong statement.
No one's going to be coming to that birthday party, I can tell.
Oh, great. Thank you
Yeah,
very
thank you
much.
for your
Thank you.
attendance.